Chapter 3. Absolute Power. The loud chanting of the rally outside penetrates the quiet toy shop. Gepetto stands at the door, gazing out of the window. The voice of a TV host echoes through the room.
Filing for a preliminary injunction has been denied at the First Federal Court. The Federal Assembly will vote on the proposal this afternoon. We have gathered a panel of legal experts to...
Gepetto turns the TV to mute, shaking her head in resignation. She flips a switch at the door and protective lamellar blinds roll down to cover the large window. Eddie adjusts the light strips, expelling the darkness from the room.
Everything seems to be going down the drain, Eddie.
Gepetto walks back to the counter, where holograms hover over the inlaid monitor. The holograms show contour lines of mountain ranges and other geological maps.
It is unfortunate, yes,
Eddie says, hesitating for a moment. In search of a comforting routine, its memory banks unearthed emotionally charged information on its master's previous political activities.
Will you be involved in the struggle, Master?
Gepetto smiles as she opens another hologram. It shows a model of a mountaintop with gray fissured bedrock and yellow magma conduits that resemble the roots of a tree drawing from the planet's core.
No, Eddie, this is not our fight anymore.
She looks at Pico, who is focused on ordering the embedded software into categories.
I have more important matters on my hands.
She motions silently to Pico. Turning back to the hologram with the magma conduits, she cocks her head in thought. Matter-of-factly, she says,
That proposal will go through. The dual ATC will crush the ecos and then turn to other enemies.
She sighs at the inability of her kind to learn from past mistakes. History books are full of power-hungry egomaniacs that only leave sorrow in their footprints. Frowning at her sudden insight, she muses.
Well played, Winslow. But what is your endgame?
Endgame, Master?
Yes. What's the purpose of this private army? He lived very well without it.
Gepetto explains. She overlays the mountain hologram with seismic activity data. A pulsating red sphere of seismic stress appears around a magma bend, indicating an unstable bedrock formation.
There must be a purpose beyond the ecos,
Gepetto says, opening a third map depicting a structural overview of a geothermal plant. Its core reaches deep into the mountain.
I am afraid I cannot follow you, Master.
Disregarding her AI's request, Gepetto intently stares at the holograms and scratches her nose with the back of her hand.
What do we have here?
With her thumb and index finger, Gepetto aligns the sizes of the holograms, watching the power plant hologram slide into place. The red sphere of seismic pressure glows next to the power plant structure, touching a magma conduit. Separated only by a thin layer of bedrock, cracks and tunnel-like fissures spread away from the red pressure sphere. Most clefts are dead ends, but one rift leads on a jagged path toward the coast. It breaks the surface in a small valley, directly under the God's AI Center.
No, it can't be.
Gepetto gasps in horror. She checks the positioning of the holograms again. No errors. Blood rushes to her face. Her desperate gasps for air echo through the shop. Staring at the red sphere in the hologram, Gepetto's mind buckles under the impact of her epiphany. Blasting the seismic stress zone will press magma into the rift. The high-pressure magma will find its way toward the coast, bursting out directly under the AI Center. In the blink of an eye, Gepetto's thoughts collapse into an avalanche of worst-case scenarios. She begins to hyperventilate as she stumbles back against the wall.
Master, can I assist you?
The AI is acutely worried about Gepetto's mental state. It never experienced her in such an emotional turmoil.
Pico, help her.
Eddie calls out to the puppet. Pico snaps out of his fixed position and turns to Gepetto. Her right hand rises in a swift dismissive gesture as she grabs the stool with the left.
It's okay.
She reassures them.
Give me a minute.
Sitting down heavily, she rubs her sweaty hands back and forth over her thighs, again and again. Her heart is pumping, her nervous gaze straying among Pico, the holograms, and Eddie.
No, Eddie, this is not our fight anymore.
Her reply to Eddie echoes in Gepetto's mind. With a cynical nod, she concedes to herself.
If this is not my fight, I may as well be dead. I know his endgame,
Gepetto whispers. Her fists open and close as she tries to control her breathing. She solved the riddle, but instead of academic satisfaction, The insanity of Winslow's strategy lets her recoil in horror. The loud chants of the protesters breach the quiet atmosphere as Evren and Arya quickly enter, closing the door behind them. Evren looks around and spots Gepettia with hanging shoulders, bracing her arms on her knees.
It's a nightmare out there.
Evren moans and pulls back the hood. Arya looks around the shop with gleaming eyes. All her childhood toys seem to have waited for her return. She whispers excitedly.
Oh, look at all the toys.
Evren is irritated at Arya's fallacy, ready to give her a snappy reply. Then she surveys the shop for herself, realizing how innocent everything looks. She gazes at Arya and replies dryly,
I know. I work here.
Gepettia is relieved to see them, but still caught in shock about the imminent global threat. This contorts her face into a strange expression, a rigid smile under wide-open eyes.
Jeppy.
Evren is instantly alarmed about her mentor's well-being. Eddie's voice quietly sounds from the ceiling.
Hello, Evren. Hello, Arya, I presume. Master is fine, but I fear she has made a terrible discovery. Can you assist?
Eddie's words come out compressed and urgent.
I'm fine, Eddie.
Gepettia waves aside her AI's worries. She grunts as she gets up and turns to scuffle toward the back room, her head low and deep in thought.
I'll be right back. I need a tea now. Something strong.
Evren is even more alarmed at Gepettia's demeanor. She slowly advances through the shop and looks up at the half-dome at the ceiling.
Eddie, what happened?
I do not know, Evren.
Eddie responds.
She was working on the holograms. She obviously found something horrendous.
While Evren inspects the holograms, Arya is still standing in the middle of the shop, glancing here and there, unsure what to do. Torn between the cozy atmosphere and Gepettia's apparent turmoil, she folds her arms, swaying from side to side. Pico has been observing Arya from behind the counter since she stepped into the shop. From the corner of her eye, Arya catches its round eye sensors and black hair. She quickly waves in Pico's direction, and the puppet's head and body appear from behind the counter. It glances toward the back room, then approaches Arya hesitantly. Arya kneels to greet Pico in a hushed voice.
Hey, Pico, how are you?
I'm not okay,
Pico answers, also in a hushed tone.
because Alma Mom is not well.
It turns its head toward the back room and adds.
I can see it.
Pico looks at the holograms that still float above the counter. Behind them, Evren tries to grasp what all the maps and geological surveys mean. A strong, musky scent of herbal tea spreads through the shop, like a combination of smelling salts and strong tikra.
Stupid holograms.
Pico says.
Stupid Winslow.
His cryptic remarks bemuse Arya.
Winslow?
She asks, confused to hear the name that covers her whole range of emotions, from love for the son to hate for the father.
He frightens Amama.
Pico's fingers form fists, and he cocks his head in thought.
Arya, why are there bad people?
Pico is already on a different train of thought, as if everything about stupid Winslow has been explained.
Wait, what?
Arya just experiences the consequences of Pico's unbridled attention. She grabs Pico's hands.
Rewind to Winslow, please. Why is Winslow stupid?
She tries to joke.
I'm just organic life. I'm not as fast as you.
Winslow wants to kill gods.
Pico points at the holograms.
What?
Arya calls out. She thinks she understood Pico wrong, but Evren and Gepettia answer in unison.
Pico is right.
Evren braces her body against the counter, staring wide-eyed and motionless at the merged hologram. There is no other reason. The seismic pressure point below the power plant is the perfect location for an explosive charge. Gepettia walks up to her young friend and pats her on the shoulder. Even now, she acknowledges Evren's wit. She weakly smiles at Evren and points her tea mug at the holograms.
I knew you'd find it yourself.
Arya accepts the embarrassing feeling that she is the only one not informed about anything. She lets go of Pico's hand and approaches the counter.
Can someone fill me in?
She asks.
I'm not so good with this secret, undercover, thing, whatever this is.
Arya lifts her hands apologetically while she tries to describe the situation from her view. Gepettia nods at her request.
You are right.
She responds as her face turns hard and determined.
Here are the facts.
She clarifies.
Raylan Winslow Sr. is the puppet master of his son. Young Raylan doesn't know. Evren told you that, correct?
Jepedia awaits Arya's affirmation, and Arya nods more out of obligation than out of understanding.
I found simple geological surveys and blueprints in the cube, among highly valuable data.
Jepedia explains. Raising her eyebrows, she asks Arya,
Now, why would you waste precious memory to hide simple files like that?
Because they are precious too?
Arya offers politely.
Exactly.
Jepedia confirms.
I combined the seismic activity data with magma conduits at the site of the geothermal power plant. And there it was.
Jepedia's voice breaks off, and her eyes dart back to the glowing red sphere in the center of the holograms. Again, the sheer folly of Winslow's plan claws at her sanity.
There was... what?
Arya whispers to Evren. She cannot see any helpful information in Jepedia's mumbling. Evren draws Arya's attention to the merged holograms. She points to the red zone of seismic pressure.
An explosive charge in this red area would release a magma stream toward the coast.
Evren pauses for a moment to let Arya process this thought.
How?
Arya frowns at the translucent holograms, unable to follow.
An explosion would collapse the mountain at that point, releasing the magma into the rifts above.
Evren shows her the small rift on the hologram that leads away from the red sphere. Following the rift, she points toward a natural valley close to the coastline.
This rift ends in this little valley.
Evren says. She locks Arya's eyes with hers.
The magma would break the surface directly under the god's AI center. It'll fill the valley with lava and burn everything in it.
Evren swallows hard before she continues.
And everyone.
She hesitates and glances nervously at her friend.
The ceremonial opening is in 3 days.
Evren remarks.
All nations have sent their highest-ranking politicians, commissaries, or nobilities.
She snorts cynically.
This is the one point in time in global history you don't want to miss, who or whatever you represent.
No.
Arya whispers, unable to believe what is presented to her. Her legs wobble beneath her as she steps away from the hologram. Evren looks at her with sincere compassion, feeling just like her. Paralyzed by impending doom, Jepedia puts down her mug and looks straight at Arya.
It's hard to swallow, I know, but that's what the bastard is going to do.
But why?
Arya cannot understand the principle.
We'll all die without the gods. What is there to gain?
She has not yet accepted the new reality.
Power, my dear. Power.
Jepedia folds her arms and leans against the wall.
They are some crackpots that believe that some of our race could survive a climate collapse near the polar ocean.
She snorts, dismissing the idea with a resigned shrug.
Of course, you'd need to survive the downfall of civilization.
Jepedia casually argues, winking at Arya.
Good thing to have a private army then, huh?
She motions to the protests against the Winslow ATC proposal.
And killing off global representatives on God's opening day is a nice twist to stoke the world's last fire.
Evren senses Arya's struggle to accept the facts, like herself. She puts the nightmare scenario in plain words.
Winslow wants the climate collapse to rule what's left of our planet.
The madness of this scheme sinks into Arya's mind. She feels sick to the stomach. Her throat and lips feel dry.
We need to let everybody know.
She croaks, instinctively trusting society to resolve the issue. Jepedia and Evren stare at her compassionately, but remain silent. They both have already weighed that option and found it to be too light.
Right now!
Arya demands in panic as they look at her in silence. Her blind activism betrays her true mental state. What she wants to do is curl up in a fetal position and wait until this nightmare ends itself.
Who would you inform, huh?
Jepedia asks gruffly.
The news? The police? The government?
She shakes her head with hardened conviction. Evren joins in, mimicking an interview.
How did you come by the information?
She asks in roll.
Oh, we found it in a homemade cube inside the arm clip. Frigging Raylan Winslow Jr.
She answers her own question, getting increasingly more agitated. Then, she breaks out of her role play and lets her arms fall to the counter. She tells Arya,
If we go online with this accusation, Winslow Security will nail us in a heartbeat.
Arya tries a different approach.
And if we do it anonymously?
She never liked confrontation, and the upheaval of her ordered little world is more than she can bear.
No, Arya,
Gepedia replies gently.
I'm sorry.
Her empathetic smile shows that she cares for the young Amma, but Arya also senses her resolved mind behind the smile.
The forums are full of conspiracy theories.
She says.
And this one may not even get a like, because it's just too crazy.
Silence falls over the shop as they all try to come to terms with the magnitude of the task at hand and their personal contribution.
I wish I could be as resolute as her.
Arya's respect for the older Amma is growing, but her own commitment to the obvious solution still eludes her.
I'm a scientist, not a terrorist, damn it.
She thinks defensively.
What could I possibly do?
Her mind starts to curl up protectively, gathering arguments against any involvement from her side. Seeking comfort, she lays her arm around Evren's waist, finding a moment of peace in her touch. Gepedia sighs to herself as she glances at her young friends.
They're too young to bear such a responsibility.
She pities her friends for what is to come, but she cannot forego their help. If anything could be done, it would require help from trusted people.
I need to talk to Kalian and his kin too.
The immigrants of Manth would be the first to feel the harassment and persecution by Winslow's ATC. They would be more than willing to help. Gepedia puts her arms on her hips and looks at Arya and Evren.
I will contact some people I trust.
She says.
They may help us.
She adds, trying to instill hope in her friends and herself.
But I need your help too.
Gepedia pleads to her friends.
I'm in, Amma.
Evren instantly replies, looking at Arya for approval.
Yes, of course.
Arya stutters, unsure. She feels a cold carbon hand in hers and looks down into Pico's face.
Don't worry, Arya. I will help too.
The puppet reaches for Gepedia and draws them in for a huddle.
We will all help.
Pico declares, and his round eye sensors sweep across their faces. A reassuring thought crosses Arya's mind as she thoughtfully agrees with Pico's statement. Locking Evren's eyes with hers, she says,
I know of someone else who will help. Ray.
Evren moans and throws her head back in despair.
I forgot all about Ray.
She exclaims.
If there is anyone who can help us, it's Ray.
Arya argues and feels a little more at ease about her decision to be part of this group.
Great.
Evren sighs. Gazing at the floor, she plays out her encounter with Raylan.
Oh, by the way, Ray, your dad uses you.
She says casually.
Sorry to tell you that your life is a lie. Oh, and your dad's gonna blow up the world too.
Evren covers her face, intently rubbing her palms over her cheeks. Arya caresses Evren's arm and says,
You're not alone.
Desert worm dinner, I told you.
I hope Ray will understand.